Hello, everyone. How are you doing today? Hello, everyone. How are you doing today? I am Dani Tirrell. I am the curator for Central District Forum for Arts and Ideas. I am also co-moderator for this conversation. This is an Intimate Conversations special edition, the Whitening of African Dance Part 2. Before we get started, I'm going to read our land acknowledgement. We at Central District Forum for Arts and Ideas would like to acknowledge that we are on the traditional land of the first people of Seattle, the Duwamish people, both past and present, and we honor them with gratitude and the land itself and the Duwamish tribe. We acknowledge that we are on land that is stolen from the traditional home of the Coastal Salish people. The Duwamish ancestors were killed, brutalized, and stripped of their humanity. We lift up their work, we hold their pain and their joy, and we honor them with our work today. Central District Forum for Arts and Ideas understands that we come from enslaved African people that endured countless acts of torture, both during and after the Middle Passage, and we are still facing that today. We bring into this space the thousands of Africans that did not make it to see this land. The work we do today is on the backs and shoulders of the original people of this land and our ancestors who now guide us. We sit in this space to honor African people and their descendants, and to give back to the original people of this land. To our ancestors, we thank you, we see you, we honor you. We invite you into this space today so we can lift up your names and honor you with our work. The mission for Central District Forum of Arts and Ideas is a nonprofit organization solely dedicated to presenting emerging Black arts, artists, and ideas in the Seattle area. We believe in the value of community, creativity, identity, and passion. These values serve as our strategic frame and guide our day-to-day operations and the program decisions that we make. Hello, everybody. We are going to let folks into the room today. I'm excited to have this conversation. If you missed part one, you missed a really great conversation. We are going to jump into part two. This is just the beginning of a conversation. Again, even though this is part two, we're still in the beginning stages. We have a lot of work to do, especially in the United States, to make sure that African dance spaces are spaces that are honoring the work of African people, and also those of us that are born in the United States that are of African descent, that we can walk into those spaces and feel like we are at home in those spaces. So with that being said, I want to let you all know that I am holding the space for the Black women that you are going to see today. I ask that if you are a non-Black person, that you govern yourselves accordingly and know that this conversation is about our healing Black people, and it will not center you. So I'm gonna start there, and there's gonna be some more things as we go forward. I'm going to bring in my co-moderator, my sister, my friend. I love her so much. She keeps it real all the time with me and other folks around. She is a beautiful dancer, an intelligent being, a wonderful mother, a beautiful wife. She just does it all. She gets you together. Let's bring in Miss Lakema Bell. What's up, Lakema Bell?
Well, hello, Dani. Hey.
Hey.
So here we are again.
Here we are again. Are you ready?
You know, I'm ready. Since the first conversation, there's been a lot of stimulus occurring, a lot of stirring happening. And I'm so grateful for the stirring, because staleness cannot happen. Stagnation cannot happen when stirring exists. So that means that things are moving and grooving, and so that, you know, things float to the top. Once things float to the top, you can clear things. So I'm excited for this conversation. I'm grateful for the partnership. Yeah, let's get it going.
Yes. I'm going to ask you this question first before we bring in folks. One of my favorite questions. What are you bringing into the space today, and who are you bringing into the space today?
What I'm bringing into the space today is always love. It's always love. It's unconditional. It's the understanding that we are all connected in one way. If we haven't learned that through COVID, I don't know how else you're gonna learn it. I'm also bringing in my ancestors and which shoulders I stand on, specifically my brother Kareem Bell, specifically both of my grandmothers, both maternally and paternally, is Zenobia Cotton and Corrine Fitzhugh, and all the other ancestors that I stand on their shoulders. Yeah, that's what I'm bringing. I'm bringing love, I'm bringing education, and I'm bringing my experience and through my lenses.
And what I forgot to do is to say that I am a Black, bald, queer person in a army green shirt in a section of my house in South Seattle with a white wall behind me, sitting on a gray couch with yellow pillows. We are trying our best to be more accessible to folks. So, Lakema, if you can give a short description of yourself and where you're at and what's around you.
Oh, yes. I'm in my kitchen next to my stove here in Seattle, Washington. Sitting in the kitchen. This is where many conversations happen. And this is also how I show love, is through communion over food. I love the people. You can see that I'm thick. Okay. And so that's how I give love in one way.
Awesome. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to step out for a second and have you introduce our guest, and then I'm going to step back in.
All right.
All right. Take it away, Lakema.
Okay. So I want to introduce, we have Dr. Orisade Awodola. She has a master's and a PhD and a root psychologist. She is an author, a lecturer, researcher. Her former background as a journalist and investigative news reporter led to a career in mental health. She has an extensive clinical and academic background in psychological and mental health approaches. She is a MIDD, professional mental illness and drug dependency, formerly known as co-occurring disorders, and the founder of the Institute of African-Centered Thought, where she created and teaches root psychology, ancestral healing, and African spirituality based on the ancestral healing identity theory. If you were on the first conversation, you know that Dr. Awodola tells it like it TI is, which is the name of the blog, the podcast that I have starting. We are so happy to have you back, Doctor. I think, okay, say it again, you were on mute.
I said, thank you very much. It's good to be in a sacred space of healing. Thank you.
Thank you. And so I'm going to introduce everybody else, and then we'll ask you the same question in which Dani asked me. So I'm going to go ahead and bring in our next guest, Muisi-kongo. She is the cultural caretaker, teaching and performing artist, and arts administrator. Muisi-kongo's arts practice is steeped in a staunch Bay Area legacy of cultural preservation, social justice, and service through art. For the past 9 years, she has served as executive artistic director of Fua de Congo, a 43-year-old Oakland-based cultural and performing arts organization founded by pioneer master artist Malonga, who is her father, a performing member with the company for over 20 years, and a lifelong apprentice of traditional Congolese cultural art forms. She remains committed to protecting, preserving, and passing on the rich traditions of the Congo people. Muisi is my sister from another father, and I am so happy to see her. We've been rocking since we were knee-high. Welcome, Muisi.
Thank you so much for having me. It is an honor and a pleasure to be with you today.
Ashayo, we're going to bring in Simone. We're going to get this conversation going. I would like to bring to the audience Miss Makeda Ebube with the Master's in Education. She also happens to be my beautiful mother, Empress, African-centered philosophy educational consultant. She's an international artist who has traveled to Canada, Kenya, Ghana, Guinea, and twice to Egypt, Kemet. Makeda is an educator, performer, movement specialist, dance instructor, choreographer, model, and intrinsic healer who is sought after to bring forth the messages of the ancestors. Makeda is called upon to perform for weddings, homegoing ceremonies, and important engagements that are essential to the wellness of the community. Makeda has taught African dance for 30 plus years. You can't tell it by how she looks. She is well known for leading large groups of people utilizing movement for community building. I want to thank you for being in this space and having grace and giving birth to me. Chris, welcome.
Thank you very much. And what a fabulous introduction for everybody. I'm just grateful to be in this space. And Muisi, I just got to kiss you. So good to see you. Okay. And my dear friend, Miss Dr. Awodola. I just have to do this. I have to do this. Got to take this sacred moment. And my Queen Empress Lakema, thank you for making this all possible. Blessings. Thank you.
Thank you. And last but certainly not least is Sumayaa Diop. She is a teaching artist in dance and drum, choreographer, actor, and administrator whose artistic goals and aspirations are rooted in love, in the love of dance theater. She is the co-founder and program director of Gradual, an organization that presents, produces, and supports dancers, theater artists, and dancers of the African diaspora while providing a number of diverse programs for youth, young adults, and adults. And as a performer and teaching artist, Sumayaa has created and presented works in both traditional influenced African and contemporary African dance styles. Sumayaa has contributed to the field of dance, music, and theater through performance, instruction, and programming. Sumayaa is passionate about sharing the dance, song, and music of the African diaspora and bringing youth to the stage using performance as a vehicle for increased self-confidence, esteem, and awareness. Sister Sumayaa, welcome, Queen Empress.
Wow. Thank you. I'm glad to be here. Thank you, Ashe. Assalamu alaikum to all my sisters and dancers. And I'm happy to be here with all these stellar goddesses and looking forward to the conversation.
Well, thank you
Who do
both.
I bring with me? I'm bringing all my teachers, all my children, all my sisters, all my nieces, all my nephews, all my ancestors, everyone we're bringing into the space. Peace and blessings.
Thank you. Peace and blessings. And so as Sumayaa went right on in it, who would like to go next on who or what into the space today? Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and say Muisi.
Okay. Well, as always, who comes before me in every space is God and my ancestors, and specifically my parents, Dr. Faye McNair Knox and Malonga Cascalord. And I think the spirit of mind I'm bringing into the space today is one of open-mindedness, patience, and courage.
Ashe, thank you. And I pose that same question to Dr. Awodola.
Wisdom. And my mother, Audrey Lorraine Hicks Villavasso, my great-grandfather, Dr. James W.C. Pennington, my great-great-aunt Marie Laveau, my great-great-uncle John Anthony Copeland, my father, William Joseph Villavasso, my brother William Joseph Villavasso Jr., my son Robert Deshaun Kennard, my grandson Alan Joshua Harris.
Ashe, thank you, Doctor. Queen Makeda, who or what are you bringing in the space today?
I bring my son, who is just so in my heart and in my spirit. I bring my sister. I bring my mother and my father. I bring my ancestors. I bring all of the great ancestors that we know and love. I bring Harriet Tubman in the spirit, in the place, in the space. I bring Frederick Douglass. I bring Malcolm X. I bring all of the great ones because we are also the ancestors' return. All the ancestors live within us. I bring God. So grateful and thankful to be a spiritual being having a human experience at this given time. That's who I bring to the space and the place. Thank you, Ashe.
Thank you, Queen. Appreciate you, Empress. And so I really am grateful for all you all coming to this conversation. And I want to give reference that the last conversation stimulated a lot of comments. I went through 20 pages of comments from YouTube, and then we went through 208 comments from the Facebook link of the conversation. And we were able to derive some common themes. So of course, we're not going to be able to touch on everything, but we will, the ones that had some common themes, we have added to the questions. So Dani, do you like to start off with the second question?
Well, I'm gonna start off with some ground rules for those that are watching today. Please, no abusive or harmful messages or comments to anyone on our panel. That will get you removed from this conversation. Please respect that you are talking to Black women and the labor that they are doing right now. So if you see anything like a Cash App or a Venmo or something like that, please pay them for their labor. I want to thank TRJ Bridges for gracing us with ASL interpretation today, and ASL interpreter. So very thankful for that. This is a Black woman-ran company out of Washington, D.C. And again, if you know me, you know how I rock. It's all about Black women and bringing Black women into the space. So that is it. I am here to hold space, and I ask that you all do that too. I know there's going to be a lot of comments. I know there's a lot of things that people will want to say and need to say. Please put them in the chat. Again, no harm to any Black woman on this panel today. That will get you removed. And I'm real serious about that part. And if you know me, I will research who you are and come find you. So with that being said, yes, I got to lay down the law. With that being said, our first question is, how does colonization and oppression allow for the whitening of African dance? I'm gonna read that one more time. How does colonization and oppression allow for the whitening of African dance? And panelists, if you want to speak, just please raise your hand. Anybody can go.
Well, I'll say this. I'm not a professional African dancer like these wonderful, exquisite women, but I can shake it up now. I can do a little something, something. Makeda Ebube was my teacher, so you know how she goes. But I would say that whoever controls the narrative controls the discourse. So, and that's coming from Dr. Thomas More, his new book, Pigment Power. He also is an expert on melanin, and he talks about how that process moves through the rhythm of the dance. And so when melanin dominant people are invaded by melanin recessive people, it decreases the vibration and the frequency of the purpose of the dance. Because, see, melanin dominated people dance for reasons. Even when we, throughout the 60s and 70s, you do the chicken, the boogaloo, or whatever, they still had a meaning to them. So that was never lost. So I would say that what we have to look at is changing the narrative. And that's what we're beginning to do now, is to change the narrative in order to change the discourse, in order to have it respected by melanin recessive people.
Thank you for that. Anybody else want to chime in on that? I know we starting off real heavy.
You're on mute, Sumayaa.
Yes, we did start off heavy, but we, that's how we do. That's how we do. I'd like to say that we have to remember that the Americas were first colonies of the British. So colonization has everything to do with the whitening of African dance, because we were first a colony before it became the United States. And with that, we also have to remember that Britain sent its criminals, people who were in the penal system, to America. Britain sent those folks here. So that was the beginning of the oppression. The attitude of those who came as colonizers, that was the attitude they came with, to destroy, greed. This is how it became, the Boston Tea Party. Taxation without representation. These were British. These were people that Britain didn't necessarily want to stay in Britain. So they sent them here. And so colonization and oppression go hand in hand with the development, are sown into the seeds of this earth here. All of the Americas, not just North America, but South America, Central America. And so to have a beginning like that and an allowance and just criminal minded with greed, I think it's sown into, it's all about deconstructing that knowledge. Yeah. Well, yes, I think colonization and oppression are deep rooted. And there is a backlash anytime we speak about this shared experience that we and white folks have, because it's a shared experience. But anytime we bring that up, there's a backlash, there's a dismissal. I'm coming today with a bit of backlash from our last conversation from white folk. Nina Simone talks about that backlash blues. Mm-hmm. And I think that that is one of the results of having these conversations. But I do believe that that's all. We wouldn't have the whitening of African dance had it not been for colonization and oppression.
I think I just want to chime in and say to those people that are watching that are not Black, you cannot be involved in these conversations and not expect to face what has happened in this country. There's no time for white guilt. There's no time for any other guilt. There's just not time. If you want to do better, then you are just going to do better. If you don't want to do better, this isn't the conversation for you. None of these women should be getting any type of backlash or harassment because they are speaking their experience and their truth. That is also a shame that you all are so small that you would do that. And I'm just, this conversation is just going to be me being really honest, because we're coming up on an election, which means there's more violence to Black bodies. And so I don't want to have a conversation where we just dancing around the thing and you all getting your feelings hurt and want to take it out on us. So that's all I'm going to say. Again, that's it. So Kima, you got the next question?
I do. I wanted to see if Muisi-kongo or Makeda wanted to chime in on how does colonization and oppression allow for the whitening of African dance, and provide your viewpoints. If not, we can move on to the other questions.
We're going to bring Muisi back in a second.
Go ahead, Makeda.
How I want to approach this is based on how it shows up on the floor in the space. In that we spoke about it historically, and of course there's more that can be added to that. What I want to talk about is how it shows up in the present. That is important for us to be aware of how energy works in a place, in a space. So when you come into an African dance class as a melanated African person, you are there purposely to connect directly to the drum and the dance in a melanated way, because that's part of your healing. And you deserve that based on what you and your ancestors had experienced, for all these experiences that we can go back in history and talk about. So when you show up in the physical to have an experience with what is, is yours in terms of African dance coming from the continent of Africa, and you come into the space and it's many, many bodies and most of them are white, and then you're attempting to connect directly to the source, and you find that the whitening element is attempting to center their energy in the space by either jumping in the front line or telling you what to do when it comes to African dance, in whatever which way that may be, even if it's just their in body language, in that they believe that they have a right to consume the experience in the way that they want to consume it, if you will, interact with it. So this is a deep level of conversation, because this may not be written down anywhere. But the important thing is to know that energy is real, and that we as melanated people is very in tune to energy. So when we come in a space and we're feeling as such that we have to back up so the center can be consumed, then there is a problem. That is part of what is colonization has brought to the forefront. That is what oppression looks like if you can't speak on it. And then you have to figure out how to navigate in the room so you can get what you come to get and need and deserve, and it's actually yours, that was actually taken historically in terms of the dance and the drum. And then when you show up, you're still having the blockage of the whitening process and not being able to address it head on. Well, thank God we are here to address it head on. Thank you.
Welcome back, Muisi. Would you like to address how does colonization and oppression allow for the whitening of African dance?
Yes, I would, and thank you. I think that that colonization and oppression have made way for sacred ritual to be commodified. So I think that
Yes.
without oppression, without colonization, African dance wouldn't be a product to be sold.
Yes. Thank you, Empress. And so I wanted to chime in on that, and we're going to move into it. And really going back on this whole thing about commodity, and we're going to talk about how does the role of money and access or lack of accesses to resources play in it as well. We have a question for that. But for me, how does colonization and oppression allow for the whitening of African dance? It is that our African, I'm saying on both ends, a continental African, and we have the African of the diaspora, not born on the continent, but still an African. It has played out in different ways. It shows up in different ways. For our continental African, because Africa has been so colonized and oppressed in their different ways in regards to lack of resources, it shows up in the need for you to find ways to resource to be able to feed your family, not only your family, but your village, right? And so when there is an opportunity, right, that comes up for you to be able to do that, then you're going to allow for whatever entity that is that shows that those types of resources are available to come in and kind of take over so that you can ensure that you can take care of you and yours. For us on this side, to me, what comes up in the oppression of is that we have been indoctrinated to believe that that we're inferior and that we must allow for an energy that we must, how can I say this? Because I know what I'm saying. We must allow how it looks for us on this side, or let's say how it looks for me. I'm not even going to say how it looks for us. I have to always be aware of what I've been socialized to believe and act out on, right? And sometimes in the space, knowing that I am in the space for my communal, in the space for my healing, in the space for the connection of the ancestors, and that when someone comes in, I need to be kind, right, and allow them to come in, and be always giving, instead of being able to say, listen, this is mine, and I have to own it and have my connection occur in this moment. That's how socialization and how the oppression is showing up in me. It may show up very differently in other folks that are on the continent, that are Africans born in America, right? But for me, that's how it shows up, right? Be kind, you're never supposed to, buck the system. You're going to be thought of as the angry Black woman if you say something, all those indoctrinations. That's what oppression shows. That's how it shows up. And that's how it ends up allowing the whitening of African dance or the whitening of any spaces to occur by not allowing us to be our true selves or who we are. All right. So we're going to go on ahead to the second question, which I think is very, and had a lot of comments from the last conversation. How do we, as Black people living in the US, begin to have the conversation with our family members from the continent about our lived experiences? And so you can raise your hand on who is going to speak next on that question.
Okay. I like to say, in reference to the earlier comment about starting out heavy, enslavement started out heavy. How do we do this and connecting with our brothers and sisters on the continent, because it's a very mixed bag. However, in Senegal, there are some ballets that white people just cannot even step on the ground where they're at. They make that very clear in some ballets. What we have to understand is a binary system. And a binary system means that there's one and zeros that is the numbers that are programmed into exchange that communicate with the computer. It's the same thing. It's a programming is a continual process. So for us, for melanated people, what we have to look at that same process and understand that when people are miseducated, it sets a mental stage for dysfunctional thinking, therefore dysfunctional action. So my bottom line here is it begins with education. It begins with reprogramming and reversing something that went in opposite, because people can be controlled psychologically so very easily on the continent, because it's easy to manipulate the mind and the thought process with money. And when you're living in a village, as many are, but not all, because there's some very wealthy people. I mean, the greatest wealth empires come from the continent. But when you have that kind of a mixture, and now, and I've always said, until Africa heal, no country and its people will heal, is that while we, the descendants, are beginning to wake up over here, they're making sure they're asleep over there with the bleaching cream, with religion, with money. You know, they just made a Chinese man a chief of some place in Ghana. How does that happen? Again, what have you learned in history? To the point that this is so deep that, okay, well, we know by the time they get over there, they'll be rejected by their own. And so it's the continual process of divide and conquer. So again, it would be a willingness on both sides to deal with what we have to go through to understand that we are one people. Because truly, only the descendants in the United States can open that door. Not in Brazil, not in Barbados, nowhere in the Caribbean. Only the descendants in the United States can open that line of communication with our brothers and sisters on the continent. And as far as white people, in terms of the whitening of the African dance, for me, it's a non-factor. Baba Olatunji once said that. It doesn't matter how you go, how far you think you go. When you stop lying about the history of who Black people are and spending the billions of dollars to do it, then we can begin to have that conversation. We have the spiritual groundedness. But when people are hungry, that changes. You begin to live under the illusion that they are the answer because they bring the money. So that is where we have to look at how willing are you to connect with the descendants? Because the descendants are willing, for the most part, to connect with the continent. For the most part. So we've got at least 100 years to another century to begin. We're just beginning to talk, and some are beginning to listen. So it's about reprogramming.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Doctor. All right, who would like to go into that conversation? Who wants to ask that next, answer the question next? Shall I repeat or do you have it? Repeat?
I just think when you talk about the continental Africans, I think of Morcham, and I think of Asan Kante, who came to the United States, and Morcham immediately aligned himself with Catherine Dunham in St. Louis. And Asan Kante immediately aligned himself with Howard University in DC. So we know that the consciousness is possible on certain levels of engagement of dance and drum. You know, Morcham is Akon's father. And he was the father of a lot of the drummers and dancers. He was the baba of a lot of drummers and dancers who came to the United States. I used to visit him with Abdoulaye. Abdoulaye, my ex-husband, had a lot of respect for Morcham. And Morcham's thing was peace, love, and respect. Peace, love, and respect. Peace, love, and respect. And although it wasn't as overt, we who were dancing and drumming and learning knew that they held the language and that they would hold us up as African Americans dancing in the Americas. And I respect that. And I don't think that there have been any since Morcham and Asan. And Morcham, I think, is older than Asan Kante. So Morcham, you know, he was the embedded African, the continental African who came to America and really aligned with Catherine Dunham in dance. And I think that provided a certain level of respect for those continental Africans who came after him. I haven't seen that in recent years, who that go-to person is, who has come from the continent, who is embedded in African drum and dance, and then seeks to align themselves with African Americans in the particularly, because Asan came to the West Coast, but he ended up going back to DC. And I think that's why, because he wanted to embed himself in our communities, and meaning African American, Africans born in America. Yeah.
Thank you, Sumayaa. Muisi? I think you're muted, Muisi.
Would you mind repeating the question one more time, please?
Yes. How do we as Black people living in the US begin to have a conversation with our family members from the continent about our lived experiences?
Well, I think first and foremost, we have to make sure that we're having the conversation with the right people that are even open to that, even people who even prioritize that type of understanding and that type of communication and desire to. I think that's first. And then secondly, I think where we have the conversation is also important. I think it's hard to have the conversation on the dance floor. And also if you have this issue or threat of financial some kind of financial ramifications. So I think who you're having the conversation with and where you're having it, I think it needs to be an intention. It needs to, everything around where the conversation happens and who you're having it with needs to be intentional. And it has to be with like-minded people who are even open to doing it and who aren't just in the business of music and dance just for money, but who actually are people who want to sow seeds and watch something grow.
Thank you for that. You know, all this feels real deep for me right now. I don't know about y'all, but it was airy. But it's feeling real deep, and I think it's necessary. It's right there in my it's like in my pit that I'm feeling this energy. So I'm grateful for it. And that means that it's work, right? That we have work to do, and that it's not gonna be an easy way, because if it was, it'd have already been occurring, right? So I think that this conversation will allow us to start to open it up. You know, my goal is to start to bring in other folks into the conversation. This was on my spirit, as I said in the first conversation, and who to call and bring in. But of course, this conversation will continue to grow for us to grow and go together. So I thank you guys for answering that question. Dani, you want to go into the next question?
Yes, I actually think Muisi-kongo was like touching on it in a big way, the next few questions. And so I'm going to put them together. The next few questions were,
yes,
do you feel we are ready to have this conversation for healing? And why has this conversation been so difficult? And I like what you said about, like, it has to be with the right people. People have to be ready, and the space. Like, those are so important. And can we just talk about that and grow those answers a little bit more? They don't need to be grown a little bit more, but just talking about like the difficulty of the conversation, and are we really ready to heal? And our healing doesn't involve anyone outside of the diaspora or the continent. Just want to put that pin in there. Muisi-kongo, let's start with you, because that was that answer you gave just like sent chills up my spine. So I just want to hear a little bit more of your thoughts around that.
Well, I think in my experience, I've seen a lot of conversations happen in the heat of the moment. Like maybe there's a clash that happens on the dance floor, and there's like this immediate desire for a response, and everybody is not equipped for that. Like every leader or every teacher is not really equipped to be able to help facilitate the kind of family conversations that we need to have as members of the African family, right? And so a lot of times something will happen. There'll be like a disrespect or just some kind of clash. And we desire that to be addressed in the way that we want it to be addressed right in the moment. And, you know, folks have the very real consideration of their survival, of money. And so stuff is outside of the context where true healing can actually take place. Because if you're asking somebody to enter into this work that doesn't have some kind of instant gratification, and then a work that can threaten whatever their livelihood or perceived livelihood is, then it's not gonna be, only the brave of heart are gonna wanna do that kind of work. And I do believe those people exist, but I think that the conversation needs to be curated, and it's not one conversation, but it's like people who are committed to actually helping to, like, you know, cultivate that healing that we all need. And we need each other wherever we find ourselves in the diaspora, on the continent, we need each other to bring about that healing.
Thank you for that. Anybody else want to put some further movement into that conversation, into those questions?
You know, what I would say is that, you know, we've attempted to have different conversations here in the Northwest. And so the Pacific Northwest is predominantly white, right? And so we have a small population of Black folks in Washington State, and even a smaller population of Black folks that actually do and participate in African dance. And I think that there's two things that are happening, like why, and this, I'm probably going into the next question, I don't need to, but why is it that, why do we find so little Black folks in African dance classes, right? Why is that occurring? Because there's a disconnect to our culture, right? There's a disconnect. There's this, the oppression about where we from, the shame, the, you know, when I was a kid, I would wear African clothing and I was called an African booty scratcher, right? It's the socialization that anything African is unruly, is not sophisticated. And so then there's this disconnect to your own culture, and therefore you don't want to even come and engage and learn about your culture, your history through those African dance classes and so forth. So one, that's that here just with those that are descendants of those from the Ma'afa, right? Then we have those that have came here for the pure survival or to achieve this idea of the pie in the sky, so that they can preserve and help to bring their families, their communities up, right? And so it becomes a difficult conversation because we have been miseducated to believe that we are not connected, that we are not of the same people, that we are not family, right? And so those conversations haven't occurred to the in-depths of what we need to occur because there's this blockage of the miseducation of Black people. I think I saw Dr. Awodola's hands up.
Thank you all for that. I mean, I think we're definitely on the same page, and that I feel a really high vibrational spiritual flow going through this particular presentation, which is very, very good. But I'd like people to know that IACT is right now training facilitators to hold healing circles throughout the Black community. And there are different kind of healing circles. And one of those is bridging the gap in communication among Blacks. I don't divide and say the continental African and those in the diaspora. I just say Black people, and we include all of everyone, invite them to the circle. And so, to open that line of communication in terms of setting a healing environment and climate. So I just want to throw that out there, that is being done. The circles will start the 1st of next month. And you can always email me for more information about that. So I think people need to know that, because Dani, you asked the question about, are we ready to have that conversation? Yes, we are ready. And we are training people training is happening right now with some mental health professionals to do this work. And then we have the circles for people that are not mental health professional, but community leaders that want to do something like this to bring us all together. We have to stop dividing amongst each other. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to throw in a question. Sorry, I'm going to throw in a question that wasn't in there, but what it's getting me to think about is that how whiteness plays in communication with Africans from the continent coming to America. Do you all think that that is part of the divide with Africans born in the United States and Africans born in the continent? Is that part of the divide? Do you think that like there's an insertion of communication that don't need to happen?
Absolutely.
Say that again.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Can you talk about that?
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about that more, please?
Well, I can base that on my experience as the PR director with Babatunde Olatunji and our conversations. And you know, more white people showed up with his records and albums than not. And he said to us, and Makeda Ebube was part of the entourage as well. And he said, how many Black people do you see out there that have paid to come in to hear my music? Unfortunately, maybe two. Maybe two. And he said, those people are paying your salary. And then the backstage, people would come and they had albums by him from 1964 that we were not even aware of. So that's how deep it is. And so then we have to look at that. Why is that? Why did we not know about Babatunde Olatunji's music? As pivotal as it is to the dance, he is the one that brought the drum back to the Black community in the 60s. He was a Morehouse graduate. He brought it back in Harlem. Before that, the drum was banned. So absolutely. So that white people have taken that as being validated by Babatunde Olatunji to invade the African dance. And I think some of it's not intentional. I think it's just part of their behavior to take it over and exploit it. We have the village, I can't think of the name of it, at Seattle Center, John's Music, Arthur Hall, what they did. How many Black people were there? So we have to look at that. And that's all part of the healing. And so, yes, they offer them what we don't because we're not even aware, but they don't know our pain either. It's a lot of tentacles to it. It's not just a cut and dry. There's so many aspects, which is why healing circles to discuss is needed to look at what happened, how do we move with and through this. This isn't about bashing white people. When you're ignorant and you don't know, you just don't know a thing. And I believe that is primarily the case. And when it's in your DNA to take over, that's what you do. You heard the proverb about the scorpion and the tortoise. The tortoise took the scorpion across the water because the scorpion couldn't get on the water. And when it got over there, the scorpion killed the tortoise. And the tortoise said, "Why did you do that to me?" And the scorpion said, "That's what I was created to do." Thank you.
No, thank you. Always thank you. So there's and I definitely want to move the conversation forward. But just even sitting in this a little bit more, there was a comment, not just, I'll put it back on the screen, not just African Americans feel disconnected from Africans. Africans don't feel they are connected to African Americans either, even though African Americans came from there and brought them here. Can we dive a little bit deeper into that thought process? Just sitting with that comment. Makeda, would you like to talk about that a little bit more? And make sure you're unmuted. There you
Okay.
are.
It's thank you. It says even though African Americans came from there and brought them here. I don't understand the and brought them here part. So what I can talk to is the disconnect, whether it's from the African, considering themselves continental Africans, and the Africans that's in the diaspora, and that it would go both ways, of course, because remember what did occur that was very real is that we were told one thing over here in the diaspora, and they were told another thing over there on the continent. And it was purposeful to divide. So we were told that if we were to go back to Africa, they would not accept us as being pure. And they were told that we were thugs and thieves and you need to stay away from them. So, with both of those scenarios, we had to struggle and still struggle today to connect. What I have made it a point is to do the very best I can to connect to every African, whether that African is from the country Liberia, the Congo, Tanzania, any parts of the African soil. And I start with small gestures of saying hello, hi, how are you? And begin to develop a genuine relationship that's built in trust and love. And it takes a while because we're moving through the scaffolding to divide that has been set forth. What I find is that as you move along in the development of the relationship, it becomes authentic. And then you can begin to have these dialogues that's necessary for the coming together in the healing. But it is true and honest work to make it so. I'm intentional in attempting to get in those various circles and start those conversations and develop those deep, rich relationships necessary so that we can build the bridge back to the continent and we both can cross that bridge so that we can do the healing because it's gonna be a need for all of us to come together and to make this happen. In terms of our healing, it's within us, the African, whether we on the continent or in the diaspora. The healing is in us. As a matter of fact, as we heal, everybody else will deal. And that's all it is about. We're not working on them, we're working on us. So it's going to be imperative that we begin to have the conversations necessary for us. And there is no divide, it's only one. And we have to know that the various parceled out parcels of land that was defined by the European was purposeful to separate. Real, true, honest Africans know that the whole continent is all of Africa and it's all our sisters and brothers. So even if we find ourselves any part of the world, that is my sister and that is my brother, and we are family. So we have to be conscious of the trickiness of the divisiveness of whiteness. And it shows up in many ways, and it can show up in yourself. So, one of the things that I know for sure is that you have to decrease the whiteness in order to increase the blackness. And so, African dance, and this is the reason why African dance is so super important, because at this point and stage of the game, it's the only pure thing left that hasn't been totally taken over by whiteness. We know now and we're clear that African dance comes from the soil of Africa. And so this is our portal and how we continue to elevate ourselves back to our greatness. So we cannot allow for the whitening process to to block that truth. And so this is how we stand today in our history, in our herstory, in our story, talking about it from a very true and genuine place and space. Thank you. Ashe.
Yes, thank you for that. Thank you for that. Lakema, should we move on? There was a comment that I really, I just wanted to highlight also. It's like the healing is in us. And a lot of times we forget that. We forget that we have the power, we have the tools to actually heal some things. And Rejeko is new to Seattle, teaching at the University of Washington, African dance and other classes. So I hope to one day get us all together so we can talk. Yes, she's also looking for community. So shout out to you, Rejeko. Thank you. Welcome to Seattle. Yes, Lakema, do you have the next questions?
Yes. I wanted to ask this for Muisi. One, because I don't think you got to answer that question. Did you have anything else on that last question? Muisi?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you have anything else on that last question?
I mean, listening to Queen Makeda, she took me way far out. So can you rein me back in so I can make sure I'm on topic?
So what Dani did was put a few questions together.
Oh, hell.
Dani put a couple of questions together, so he might have to bring that together because I don't know how he connected those pieces.
Yes.
How do you connect them pieces, Dani? Go on and help us out here.
I will bring us back into the way my brain works. I'm just trying to get my questions back up. So what I was asking initially was, are we ready for healing conversations, and why have these conversations been so difficult? That was those questions. And then why did I just forget the other question?
That's all right. We're gonna keep it. We're gonna keep it going. Muisi, is that good for you, Queen?
Yeah, that's good. Healing is hard work, you know, and that's in any context, healing of the body, healing of the mind, healing of the spirit. It's hard work. Now imagine healing of an entire spectrum of people who are all interconnected and affected by different perspectives of the same oppression. So you have to be well girthed and grounded to even desire to do that kind of work. So I believe we are ready. I believe everybody's not ready. I believe that, but there are enough of us, wherever you find yourself on, whatever side of the Atlantic you find yourself on, or where you were born. I believe there are enough of us, as we seek each other out, to have the difficult conversations, to have the healing, to people who are girthed enough to take on the lifelong work it will be to bring about the type of healing that we're looking for. So I do believe it's possible. And I just point to, my own parents. So I know that there's always this conversation around, African people think this about African Americans, and African Americans think this about people who were born on the continent. But there are some people who are elevated of mind and elevated in spirit, who can see past all of that stuff, who see past it who see past the deception to find each other and to create and build together. So my mother is African American, my father born on the continent, but through through like brilliant minds and the strength and commitment to Pan-Africanism, I didn't really experience a lot of those hangups, those illusions in the way that I was reared. And my mother, who was born in Germany, but grew up in California, she always said that she said she was an African. And I remember I was young and I asked her, well, I was like, Mom, but you weren't born in Africa. And she said, well, if I was born in a plane, would that make me a plane? I'm an African. And so I think everybody needs to get to that point of understanding. And I think it's the thought leadership that's present in this conversation right now that'll bring up some of our cousins and aunties wherever they find themselves in the world, who are hung up on the illusions that are meant to suppress, oppress, and keep us in bondage.
Ashe. Thank you, Ashe. All right. So Sumayaa, I want to acknowledge that we don't see Sumayaa on the call. She has having some technical difficulty, and we're working on bringing her on back. And Makeda will be coming back as well. So we're going to move up into the next conversation, the next question. And so we had this question was asked a few times, both on the Facebook comments as well as the YouTube comments. And this is a juicy one. And they said, you need to go deeper into the conversation. Don't be on the surface with it and all this yin or yang, right? So here's the question. What role does sex, money, and access sources play into the whitening of African dance? Now, we didn't ask the question. Who want to start answering it?
I'm sorry, I took myself off the screen and I had to come back to the screen and just laugh because it's about to be on the topic. I just want to say that I'm about to go mind my business.
So who want to go and answer that question first? I see folks is not trying to touch that question.
So I'm going to jump in again because the doctor, she is going to answer that question. But I literally, when we were talking about this, Lakema, the thing that popped into my head was the Mandingo. That is the thing that actually just popped into my head, and how no matter what, Black bodies are so objectified sexually. And in my opinion, that most folks feel if you're coming from the continent, you are more exotic, you have more to offer, more to give, more to blah, 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 blah. So we're going to really hone in and clamp down on you. I'm going to start there, and then I'm going to shut up maybe.
You're on mute, Dr. Awodola.
You're unmuted now. Yep, you're good.
Okay. Our hands and feet are two-toned. So we have to look at the nipples, the vagina, and the tip of the penis. Okay? And we want to talk about the differences of that and understand the extrasensory perception that is. Our feet are to the ground and our hand is to the air. And this is how we're connected with the melanin. So the vagina and the penis are spiritual dwelling places where we have the most powerful spiritual experiences that we call orgasms. And that connects us to nature and procreation. Okay, so again, the question is, because I know I can go with this one, what role does sex have to do with it? As Tina Turner said, what's love got to do with it? So the reality is that our bodies, melanated bodies, is connected to the cosmic forces in the universe. And so our skin is that melanated conduit that possesses that melanin to enhance the harnessing of the energy that is in the universe. That is why we move like we move in African dance. We're gyrating movements that are not sexual, but it's the same process for procreation, and maybe not procreation, because you procreate creating an embryo. And as I mentioned before, the umbilical cord is an expansion of the penis, and the placenta is an expansion of the egg. Okay? And they cultivate the embryo until that embryo becomes a child and is born known as a living soul. So sex is misinterpreted among a lot of people in the dance because it's a sacred process. As I said, dances have different meanings for different things. So what role does sex play in African dance is again about procreating. It's creating a healing environment. It's creating an environment for whatever the dance is. If it's a wedding, if it's a funeral, I happen to be from New Orleans and we have jazz funerals. We sit at the graveyard and barbecue. And all that is a sexual interaction. Now, what has happened is taken out of context, because for some people, primarily non-melanated people, there is no connection there to the universe or to nature in that sense. Spiritually connected, but not soul connected. There's a difference there. Everyone has a spirit. Souls are measured aspects of our well-being. So sex is a very important part of creation, period. The moon and the sun have sex when it's an eclipse and they give birth to stars. I mentioned that before. So that's how sex plays a role into the dance. But what we need to understand is that it's not a sexual intercourse, physical, orgasmic thing, but it is a intercourse, spiritual, orgasmic process. When you do the Congolese, you have a spiritual orgasm. That's right. And that's something related to what they have called white people the Kundalini, or what is it, tantric sex. That's not spiritual. To understand that fluid that goes up your spine is the same fluid that's excreted during ejaculation or women's orgasmic processes, is the same fluid that goes up your spine to your brain. And when it dries up, you dry up. It keeps it moving from the root chakra to the crown chakra. And it sits at the seat of the soul, which is the third eye, the pineal gland. And the reason I said that white people don't have that experience is because the pineal gland is calcified. And when something is calcified, you have to work at it to get it uncalcified. I would recommend that everyone watch the movie called William. Now, see, you're taking me into another area
that right.
I want to talk about. Watch the movie. Just let me end here. Watch William. It's about Neanderthals. Watch it.
I just want to say our Cash App is down there. So y'all getting educated a lot right now. So just use her Cash App and that's all I'm gonna say. I just keep popping in and out because I'm just like, okay, just be quiet. But y'all getting some real great education. I'm getting educated right now. So just, pop the good doctor some cash,
All right. Thank you, doctor.
Hold on, I teach it, so take the class. So take the class.
All right. So who would like to take on Sumayaa? Welcome back. And we're on the question of what role does sex, money, and access to resources play in the whitening of African dance? This was several different questions and comments from the last conversation. So we thought that it was important that we address it.
Oh my goodness. Well, you have to, it's all undercover. There's a deep sexual, I don't even know what to call it. It's underneath. I went to the conference in Toubab Jalal in Senegal in 2018, and there, I think I touched on this our last conversation, and there were many Europeans there from Spain, from Italy, from France. I thought I was coming into a fellowship with other African born continentals, and I did, but there was this big contingency of women from Europe and one Brazilian man, but it was all women, white women or European women. And at night all kinds of things were going on over there, and I was able to witness that there is this undercurrent of sexual energy between the continental Africans and the Europeans that was deeper than what I had been exposed to, even here in America, because the Europeans been going to Africa for a long time. And I got into an altercation with a white woman from Chicago who was at the conference. And something happens when the European gets with the African and then has to also deal with the energy of a Pan-African like me. And I was reading the chats, and I wanted to bring this up too, that, my ancestors were Garveyites. My great-grandmother told my mother about Haile Selassie being crowned emperor in Ethiopia in the 30s. So that lets me and my generation know that my great-grandmother was a Garveyite. And that oftentimes white and European dancers who come into African dance know nothing about the Marcus Garvey movement, because that's information that's not being passed on. And that the way we come into the dance is through intellectual, social, societal, cultural responsibility and accountability. And a lot of that gets lost. So then there's no, Europeans tend to think that the story starts when they show up. That's all they're concerned with. That's just my experience, that there's no story worth telling until the stories that they bring. That the story that they bring takes precedence over any other story that might be in the room, that might have happened before them, that even may have invited them in. But it always is about from the time they show up to the time they leave. That's the story. And so when I was in there, and when I was in Africa, and I witnessed a lot of those continental men having sex with, having relations with white European women or European women. And there was one brother from, was he from Togo? I don't know where he was from. I felt safe with him, even though he was having relations with these women. He still took the time to acknowledge me, acknowledge my presence, have me pray over the circle. He did show me that deference, but he was still a married man having sex at this camp with white women. And I saw that clearly. So I think it's something that I didn't have anything to do with, but I did witness it. And I think it's, I don't think it's a problem. It's not a problem for me, but certainly it's going on.
Thank you, Sumayaa.
Yes. I hope I didn't go too long. Sorry.
Listen, this kind is forever. Muisi or Makeda, what role does sex, money, and access to resources play in the whitening of African dance? Through your lenses, let us know.
Okay, I'll go. For all the years that I've been doing African dance, been blessed to do it, I have watched Europeans go over to Africa and marry the drummer and bring the drummer back. And they are the only ones that can communicate with that drummer, say that they speak French. And we had to talk to the interpreter, which is the white woman who speaks French, to try to talk to the drummer. So that there is a problem, and it's absolutely resource. It's a resource situation and it's a money situation, because that's how he got over here in the first place, to be able to play them drums. Right now, we want to connect, but can't because he may not speak English. And we have to witness having to go through the European to try to communicate to our African brother. That's a major problem. Okay. And even if we are attempting to maybe hire the drummer because we have gigs we're doing, or we're doing something with the school, or we are attempting to make it happen in the community, we got to go through her to get to the drummer. So these are the fallouts of the whitening process, if you will, connected to the economic power that is placed in the space at the given time. Here is the situation that I want to bring forth. As my dear sister Queen Sumayaa spoke to, is that we come in the room with a certain amount of knowingness. And we enter in the room with that knowingness, be it Marcus Garvey. In my case, I'm from Oakland, California. I come in with that Black Panther power, information. I come in with the struggle of my people. I know about the vibe, or what it is to vibe, if you will, blackly black with no interruptions. I know what that is. So I come in the room with that. So one of the things that's very clear is that how you approach the dance has everything to do with your journey in the dance. So some people come to the dance because they want to learn the steps, and then they want to teach, and then they want to perform, and then they want to make money. Just like that. And some people is on a mission to connect back to their original self, to heal the splinters of segregation, oppression, racism, and all of that. That is a different experience in the room, first of all. So for those people who are not led by money and they are on that mission, they have to position themselves in the room in various ways to watch out for the whitening process, if you will. So that would mean that it's important to not have white people in front of you if you're attempting to dance. And it doesn't matter whether they know the step, because it's not even about that. It's about the interruption of the connection that's necessary for your healing. It was purposeful for me not to take African dance classes from a white person, even if they knew the information. It was important for me not to mate with a white man, even if he had money. So there is integrity in the experience and your connection to your culture. So in that this sexualized situation is happening, I didn't participate on those levels. So there is it was important for me to continue to womaness, in my case, what is truly my actuality, reality to the culture, and not have it defined externally, and not muck it up with something that doesn't speak truth to me, like having intercourse just because of the fact that we are in the place and space on any level. One thing that is important in these situations is the narrative of how you are having your experience is going to always be what is truly going to be the result of your interaction with the dance and the drum and your purpose. My purpose was to make sure that my children got it, that I passed on the information. What I made happen was let me excrete out as much whiteness that I've been affected by as soon as and as thoroughly as I can, and make that a continuous situation. I say squeeze out the pus is a must. That's part of my language. And what I'm saying is, in my environment, I made sure that my environment was African, that it did not look like Europeans when you step in my house. I made sure that I indulged and interacted with Africans, and that I ate African food and wore African clothes. And I don't do it for makeup. I don't do it just for a show. I do it because it's who I am. Ashe?
Ashe. And we're moving right along. It's about, we're doing good. I want to pull Muisi-Kongo into that last question, and then we're probably going to some questions and answers. I think, Dani, I'm trying to get the feel of this. I feel like I'm doing all right. So Muisi,
There you are.
what role does sex, money, and access to resources play in the whitening of African dance?
I think that those elements are very real and present in shifting the nature of what African dance, African drumming is in its original state, and what it becomes here in the United States of America. And I think part of what I've been meditating on, or just kind of thinking on throughout this conversation, is, even with the title of what we're discussing, the whitening of African dance, it can be very plainly understood as like only white people on the dance floor, right? The whitening, like just the physical look of it. But really, I think maybe the more meaningful way to look at it is just like white values, white, white, this kind of white mindset, white supremacy, how that plays out. And of course, sex, money, all of these are forms of currency, right? Could be energetic currency, it could be like, monetary currency, but forms of exchange. And so I definitely do believe that when you take African dance outside of its original context, and even though you have people of African descent who are coming to it to plug into the original context, because you've extracted it from where it was, and you open it up to anybody who comes into it, and you plug it into this society. You can't keep it separate from the trappings of this society, the trappings of white supremacy. Everything that's going on outside of the dance floor is happening on the dance floor. So, power, who owns it? Who is in control of it? Who is the face of it? So the more juicy, salacious part, yes, the sex, the money, it's all there. The grapple for survival, and what do you have to sell in order to, if you're selling the dance, or if you're selling yourself, in order to be able to survive as your only means of currency, it's all there. And you have people come into the dance, like Queen Makeda said, for different reasons. And sex and money and access to resources can keep certain people away, and can give more people who are not necessarily white people, more access to African dance, rather than people of African descent.
Thank you.
I wanna say that we have to look at this as it is very violent to bodies. We don't talk about the idea that all of this is also about violence, and people think like violence needs to look like a very particular thing, but the over sexualization of Black bodies in African dance classes, and any dance classes from the African American diaspora, is violence. The taking of money and resources is violence. The conversation of I'm married to this Black person and the only way that you can talk to them is through my white body is violence. So I also want to just put that out there, that we have to understand that we understand it is violence. Other people need to understand that it is a form of violence, which is also a form of oppression. I just wanted to throw that in the conversation also, looking at it through that lens too, because that's what it is. Be it intentional or not intentional, that's what happens. So go ahead, Lakema. I know you wanted to.
Yeah, I thank you for that. And I also wanted to add, because Muisi, we talked about this on the first thing, because when we're talking about whitening, the whitening and what the whiteness is this idea and this concept, right, of, superiority versus inferiority, right? It's this concept, like you said, what's showing up in the macro of the world is showing up in the micro in the African dance. And I also want to get to this point when we were talking about the how oppression shows up in what I've seen in my African American experience here on the continent, is that it shows up in your thought process, even if you are not of European descent. So my daughter, who's 15, said all skin folk ain't kin folk. Okay, so when I'm talking about the whitening, you can have folks that look like us in a space that are acting out and perpetuating the same violence that we have been enduring and experiencing from what we call this concept of whiteness, right? So we need to be clear that when we're talking about, we're not necessarily talking about just white people. We're talking about the ideology, the concept, the attitude that has been socialized in all of us. And what we must do, as my mom said, is squeeze out the pus, is that we have to squeeze out the whiteness in us, is what I'm talking about. That's why this conversation had to come up. So the violence that Dani is talking about can be done by your brother that look like you. Yeah. By your sister that look like you, because they have been socialized and indoctrinated to think that is how they need to be in order to, i.e., get power, i.e., put your face in front of, i.e., hold everything for yourself and have your resources so that no one else can benefit from those said resources, i.e., no reciprocation. It has to be a win-win transaction in any experience that we have. And whiteness says that is not it. Whiteness says that only I hold the power and all of you not. If you want any resources, you come through me. And so that ain't just in the white skin. It's also in the skin I'm in. Okay, that's all I just wanted to say.
Say it. Say it loud and say it.
Say that, Queen.
Yes.
Is that what we was talking about, Muisi?
There's a reward.
You broke it down so it could forever and perpetually be broke.
Okay, that's what we're talking about.
We are rewarded for that. We are rewarded,
right?
But for our whiteness, we are rewarded. There's, you have to remember that if you're white, it's all right. If you're brown, stick around. If you're black, get back. And everybody knows that. So that's embedded in us. That's embedded in Europeans because they know it too, right? If you're white, you're all right.
Mm-hmm.
And the closer you are to white, that's even better. We don't have to feel threatened by your cultural ways. And we also have to remember that Black people, Africans born in America, were killed if they were found with a drum and a dance and a bell and a shakeré. That was off limits, just like reading and writing. That was off limits. If we ever caught you in the back dancing and singing, you going down in the hole.
Yeah.
You're gonna get punished for that. You don't get rewarded for that. So in treating us like chattel, they ring that bell. This is your reward for this behavior, and this is your punishment for this behavior. So that's that, like animals, which Europeans love their dogs, right? Because it's all about control. So they treated us that way. That's embedded in us.
Mm-hmm. That's
embedded in us. That's that whiteness that we have to chip away generation after generation. Mm-hmm. But we're at a place in pop culture and in hip hop culture where this is not being passed on. These things that we're talking about are taught. Someone taught this to me. Oral storytelling. We the griot. We tell these stories through music, dance, and song. It was taught to me. And so, yes, I have a responsibility to teach it to those that I come in contact with and my family.
Right.
But I don't see it. I don't see what's going to happen after our generation. What's going to happen after Lakema's generation? What's going to happen after these generations that we're teaching? Right. Who's going to pick up this torch? Because we could fade away. This conversation could fade away. African dance and drum could fade away.
Right.
We are not going to let that happen.
Yeah, I should.
Okay, that's the reason why we are all taking our stance in courage to have this conversation. It absolutely will not happen on our watch. This is spoken into the universe. Ashe.
Asheo.
I am going to jump in for a second because I have some, of course, business to take care of. And then we're going to jump back into the conversation. First off, just thank you all so much. For those that are tuning in, this is a point of just educating yourself so you can do better. I love having conversations with Black folks because I find out something new about myself. I find out ways that I can do better as a Black person, as a person walking this earth. So those of you that are tuning into this conversation, especially if you are not Black, this is a way of educating yourself. Go out. The history is there. The history is documented somewhere. So when you enter these spaces again, you can enter those spaces differently. You can understand that the bodies in the spaces, who you are causing harm to, who's not being caused harm to, who's being uplifted, where your money is going to. I'm going to say that, then I'm just going to do my little bit of business. Next week, please join us for another conversation Humanity, a evolving perspective. We're going to have that conversation next week. YouTube and Facebook. That will be with Vania Bynum. She has a project coming out, Humanity and Evolving Perspective. So October 24th at 4 p.m. Please tune into that conversation. We'll have more information about that coming out soon. And also, Vania has a show that is a fundraiser, and money will be going to help people get access to food, especially Black and brown bodies. We know during this time, it is hard for Black and brown bodies to access food. Humanity Evolving Perspective will be November 8th. That's a Sunday at 4 p.m. And we'll definitely have more details coming soon. So please look out for that. And then next week on our Intimate Conversations at 3 p.m., we have Quinn Johnson. She is a tap dancer out of DC. She is on the artistic team for Soul Define. They're a tap dance company out of Washington, D.C. She happens to be my cousin also. So she has 3 books out within the Lucky Tap Dance. Oh God, Quinn is going to kill me. Lucky Tap Dance. Ha! I'll get it right, Quinn. So tune in next week. This conversation is in partnership with the Skin I'm In LLC. And it is also part of a grant from In the Park Grant by Office in Arts and Culture. We want to thank Tiffany and Leticia. I'm going to get it right. I'm sorry I said your name wrong. They are our ASL interpreters from TRJ Bridges. This is a big step for us to have interpreters. So we are doing our best. But I want to move this conversation forward. I just wanted to do that little bit of business and say thank you all. Lakema, where do we take this next? Where do you want to talk about next? What do you want to talk about next?
Since we did the little commercials, I wanted to do a quick commercial. And if anybody needs to go ahead and have some commercials, we might as well do that. But there's been a lot of conversations around this conversation and how we continue and how we start to heal, and as Dr. Awodola said, hey girl, as Dr. Awodola said, that the healing circles is very paramount to starting these conversations. And so this conversation and other conversations will start to be moving towards a new podcast that the Skin I'm In LLC is doing, which is my business. And it's in honor of Zenobia Cotton. When I say we are bringing in our ancestors, the podcast is called Tell It Like It T.I. Is. It's something what my grandmother used to say. Okay. And for those of the African diaspora, or maybe just the Black folk, y'all know exactly what that means. Tell it like it T.I. is. Truth is. And so you can go to my website or my page. I think that we have that up there so that you can sign up on the sign up for the contact list so you can get into the conversations. If you all want to have, if you have ideas around conversations that you all want to talk about, if you want to be some panelists on the conversations for the podcast, we're looking to launch that in actually next month in like the 3rd week of October around Thanksgiving and so forth. So we're truly excited about that because we want to continue these conversations. Because really, she was about me and it's for my healing. No, I'm just playing. So I just wanted to give that commercial. I know that Dr. Awodola has some things coming up. Muisi, Sumayaa, Makeda. So if you guys want to put in a commercial before we go into some other questions.
Put in the commercial.
Well,
I don't know how to do this private chat thing. I have a private chat and then I have comments. I can't I can't chat in the comments. So is what I'm putting in the private chat going to the comments? So is that how that works? There we go. Okay.
It can.
There you go.
So Sumayaa, right now it has your Cash App up. I think it has your email up as well. So if you want to bring up what you're doing and what's coming up.
Yes, we're doing we just finished today collaborating with Sister Lakema over there in Judkins Park. We did a 5-week drum and dance workshops. And I'm working with an organization called The Gathering Roots, and it's a Black women-led wellness cooperative. And they're doing yoga, African dance, everything that has to do with wellness and Africans born in America. And that's on Thursdays. And I think the Gathering Roots is the website, thegatheringroots.com. Yeah, I've got things going on. The platform, I'm having a difficult time teaching on the platform. This whole being in your head all the time and sitting and so I'm really trying to return into a more performance-based moving forward, because I found myself pigeonholed in as a teaching artist. And now that the platform has changed, I'm not willing to be dance. I'm just having a hard time. The root of African dance is community. Let me feel you. Let's evolve the drum and dance and the song until we reach the heavens. I mean, that's the point of it. So to try to do that in this kind of play, it's like, oh no, I can't teach that this way. This is totally linear. And they won with this. This is a battle that they won. Having all of us talk to the machine. Because we learn in anti-racism training that Europeans' primary relationship is with objects, and that Africans' primary relationship is with human beings. So that's a totally different philosophy that we both come in. But this is a battle they won, because now they have us all separated, masked up, talking to the machine. This becomes the primary relationship with the object. I'm having a hard time with that.
Shay Queen.
Yeah, I'm done. I just need.
I appreciate that.
I'll leave it there.
Well,
I got to save the next one for the next conversation.
But y'all got some other commercials, because we got 7 minutes. Y'all got some other commercials.
Well,
oh, okay. Sorry, doctor.
No, I already mentioned about the healing circles. The website is there and the email. And November 14th is the 8th annual Ancestral Healing Conference. Dr. Bynum, Bruce Bynum, Dr. Raymond Winbush, Nikki Giovanni, Dr. Timothy Moore, and we may have another one. I'm not going to say that person's name, but and then we have a Dr. Mindy Fully Love. She did the book Root Shock. So the theme is intimacy and spatial distancing and the family unconscious. So you'll get more information if you send me your email. The website will be updated by Monday with the new information for the conference. Usually we have an annual conference. However, due to the situation, we're doing it a different way, but I understand spirit flows through water and electricity, so it's all good.
Thank you, Doctor. Muisi? You're on mute, Queen.
Okay. The mute button. So I just invite everybody to follow me on Instagram. It's at Muisi-kongo. There are some exciting events this season happening. The next one upcoming is Malonga Fest, and that's going to be in December. It'll be mostly virtual with 1 or 2 in-person installments, limited spaces. And then also in the next several months, please be on the lookout for the the premiere of a site-specific work called Congo Dance to Nairobi Blues. And it's something I've been working on for the past couple of years. It tells the story of how Congolese dance came to the United States, or came to California, particularly. Not that it wasn't already here on the soil with the folks who were here already, but in its kind of more modern emergence. And yeah, so at Muisi-kongo, and then also I'm on Facebook at the same name. And thank
Muisi,
you.
I just have to say, you look like your father. And I really think I met you when your mama's name is?
Her name was Faye McNair Knox.
I think I met your mother. You must have, how old are you? Well, I won't ask that. Yeah, I won't ask you
don't
that.
make me say it online. Oh, no.
I think I met your mom and when I met your dad. This had to be the late 80s when I first met your father. And you look like him. Your joy is like his joy. Your face, your cheek. So it's a pleasure to see you and to share space with you. Your father was a wonderful, wonderful, healing, vibrant, authentic warrior and master of Congolese dance. So thank you. Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Ashe. Makeda, would you like to do your commercial?
Yes. First of all, I'm easy to be found on Facebook. That's true. Just Makeda Ebube. And then the other thing is that I want to say something to Muisi-kongo as well, is that all the African dance that I have done, Senegalese, Guinea, Ghanaian, Afro-Haitian, Congolese is my favorite, and I think you know that already. And the reason why is because it's the imaging of the circle and the bringing forth of life. And that's what the Congo expresses for me. And I love it exquisitely. And you know that your father is like my father, as that's just real. And all those times that I made it to the Congolese camp is sacred times. And I want you to know I love you and I appreciate you so much. And thank you for honoring us with your presence on this platform, Queen. And I want to say that my commercial is coming down the pipes. I don't want to expose it too much, but know that I would be mastering excellence and that you would have more of this information as my daughter do her Comcast, her podcast, her podcast. Then I will go ahead and roll out the red carpet on the rest of what is to come. Just know that it would be truly who I am and how I already been walking. I'm just going to have it available for everyone to partake. Love you all and thank you. And ashe, ashe, ashe-o.
Yes.
Ashe-o. Dani, take us away.
I will end this by saying thank you, Dr. Awodola. I get names messed up so bad. That is so bad. Doctor, you want to speak? Go ahead, because I just didn't. Wait, hold on.
She just said peace.
Oh, you saying peace?
Yeah, I'm saying peace. I'm good.
Muisi-kongo, thank you. I met you quite a few years ago, and everything that everybody said, your spirit is everything. When I first met you, I was just like, who is this beautiful person? And I met you with Lakema, so thank you for joining us. Sumayaa, always great to see you. And listen to you and learn from you. And Mama Makeda, that's just all I'm gonna say, Mama. Yes. You're everything to me in my household. So thank you so much for always loving and being present. My sister Lakema, thank you so much. Follow what she is doing. She's doing some really great work in the world. Follow the podcast. Follow everybody on here and support them in the ways that you can support them. You all will have the final word. My favorite question is, what is your joy? And Lakema, you gonna end us out.
All right.
Somebody else can start first, but what is your joy? Oh, wait, I must say thank you, TRJ Bridges, again. Thank you all so much for helping us step it up and helping us become more accessible. Please look for them online. I know in a lot of our advertisements, we have their email address, not email address, website. So please follow them. They are out of Washington, D.C.
So what is your joy?
Ooh. I would go ahead and speak. My joy is being thankful, being grateful, and wrapping myself in the blessings of being grateful and thankful to my life, my journey, my ancestors that continue to carry me, my beautiful family, my beautiful queen daughter, Lakema, my beautiful queen daughter, Aziza, my beautiful son, immediate ancestor, Kareem Bell, my beautiful son, Ruben, my beautiful daughter, Portina, and my beautiful daughter, Shagana, and all of my grandkids. I just have to do that part. That's the mother in me. And I want to thank all of my friends, all of my heartfelt friends. My queen sister Orisade, she know I love her so much, and we just riding hard. I love it. And then Miss Queen Sumayaa, oh my God, I just love you.
I'm having such
a great time with our relationship. It's so yummy.
We've just grown so much together.
And yes, and Muisi-kongo, you know you are definitely my sister from another mother and father. Okay, and that's just we just ride. We're gonna do this Congolese. Right on, keep on riding with this Congolese. It's beautiful. And Dani, I just want you to know I love you so much. Thank you for being who you are and how you stand up in truth. It just really makes my heart want to just cry in joy. So I just want you to know that and how dear you are and Marlon is in my life. So thank you so much. And the joy of love is extremely important to me. And we have to understand that when we block other people from experiencing the highest levels of joy, that's something that we can correct within the self. So let's think about how we show up and how we impact others. And my joy is to just spread love and spread truth. Thank you so much.
Ashe.
All right. Thank you. Next on What's Joy?
I have to go, so I'm going to say joy is my family, people in my life, and life itself. That's it. I got to go, y'all.
Ashe.
Thank you for being here. Love you so much.
Love you too. All right.
Peace and love.
Peace.
All right. Muisi, Sumayaa.
My joy is in sharing my gifts towards the healing of other people. and the healing of myself.
Thank you. That was powerful. Go ahead, Sumayaa.
Ooh, my joy. My joy is, you know, they sent me to school, to liberation school, when I was 7 or 8. And my dad would always say, you know, you were the one we sent to liberation school because you were the one that wanted to be white. And so as we evolve as Africans born in America, we're indoctrinated through the media, through TV, through arts and culture, through that whole whitening thing happens very early for us. So there has to be an intervention. Someone has to intervene for all children. So my joy is in liberation, because African dance was part of that liberation, liberated my body, which I had cut off because it was being attacked by, you know, external forces. That's what they do. They attack our bodies. So we learned to disconnect from our bodies. African dance brought that holistic liberation back to me. I own my body. And it was said to me that your body is your Bible. It carries all the stories that you have ever experienced in the world. It's the only thing that's ongoing with you. So everything that we have ever done, we hold it in our bodies. So the liberation, my joy comes through my own liberation and activating liberation in children, in the people that I come into contact with, in my family, with my son. And it's never ending. It's ongoing. This is just, what do they say? This is a journey. It's never ending. We get to one post, one goal, then there will be something to go further until we return all the way back to the ancestral realm. It never stops. So my liberation is ongoing, and you are my joy. You are my joy. This is my joy. Having a safe space to be me and to talk about what is impacting me and what I value. And this is my joy. Thank you. Thank you for providing it.
Shay, thank you. So finishing off with my joy again is to provide education space for future generations. My joy is the love of community. My joy is the love of love. My joy is my communion with the Most High and my communion with my family. My joy is my communion with community. And my joy is to continue to have these conversations so that we can have internal healing, right? Not the scab on the top and putting a Band-Aid on. It's like a cyst. I don't know if you had one, but you got to open that bad boy up, stuff it, and let it heal up from the inside out. That's where my joy comes in. And again, you can go to the IMINLLC.org and sign up for the Tell It Like It TI Is podcast, as this conversation will continue to evolve, and it will continue to have the conversations around the different challenges that we have, and it's specifically challenges that I've had and my children had, from molestation, from rape, from having a father who's a gangster pimp. All those conversations will be had. So if you're ready for that type of conversation, for it to tell it like it TI is, IMINLLC.org. Love you.
That's it, everybody. Have a beautiful night. We will see you somewhere out in the web, in the universe, in the world. Thank you all once again. Again, I'm always blessed to be surrounded by powerful Black women. I'm thanking my mothers and my grandmothers and my aunts for just doing that. And y'all have a beautiful night. Thank you, lovely women, for being a part of this conversation. And we will see you all later.
Love, blessings,
Yes.
prosperity.